So, hello everybody. Today I thought I'd talk about how I ended up getting a diagnosis of Asperger Syndrome or high functioning autism. When I was a kid, I had some issues that nowadays they probably would notice and say, that kid may have high functioning autism or something. But back in the 80s, when I started school, I don't think they were really looking for that. I'm not sure they even knew what it was. I don't remember hearing much about autism back then. So I'm not sure how many people even really knew about it, especially higher functioning. But when I was young, I had a lot of what today might be seen as symptoms of autism. I definitely had the obsessive interests. I was highly intelligent and I had a really advanced vocabulary for my age pretty early on. A lot of the kids at school used to call me like encyclopedia and stuff like that, which I didn't really take as an insult. I figured, hey, they just know I'm smart. That's cool. But and I had some social issues when I was younger. I remember getting in trouble for things and not really understanding why I was getting in trouble. Like when we first started reading in like first grade, reading out loud, I didn't understand that the other kids would stutter because they're having trouble reading. In my mind, since reading was easy for me, I figured it had to be easy for everybody. And I didn't understand that they weren't doing that on purpose. I thought they were just being funny, trying to, you know, get people to laugh. And so I would laugh, and then the teacher would get really upset with me. And I remember one time her calling me in for a conversation about me thinking it was funny when the other kids would stutter and stuff. And I was kind of blown away. I mean, I felt bad, and I still feel bad to this day because I can't imagine how I made those kids feel, and I never would have meant to make anybody feel like that. But I didn't understand that just because things were easy for me, they weren't easy for everyone else. In fact, until I got my high functioning autism diagnosis a few years ago, I always had this idea that most people experience the world the same way I do, that they had the same kind of problems and things like that. But now I know that's not true, and it's helped me understand a lot about things that happened in the past that I didn't understand. And another example of when I was a kid and I didn't quite understand social rules is I had a friend, and I did have friends all throughout my childhood, although I hate to say it, but I wasn't always the best friend back, and I wish I could go back and do things differently in some ways. But some of my friends, I tended to see them more as objects than people. I remember one of my friends, I wanted her to be my living doll, and she told the teacher because she was upset about that, understandably, and I kind of got in trouble for that, which, I mean, I probably deserved it, but again, I didn't really understand other people's feelings so much. I only understood things from my point of view, and I've tried to work on that through the years as I've gotten older, but it's still something I struggle with. I'm sorry I keep itching my nose, but my allergies are driving me crazy. But as I got older, things started to really get confusing around middle school because suddenly all the other kids were really into, well, especially the girls were into boys and makeup and things like that, and I had absolutely no interest in those things. I was still into Disney movies and reading. I've always had a great obsession and love for books. And I remember I went out with this boy for like 1 week or something in sixth grade, and he would call me, and all I talked about was my love of books and how I had dreams of when I got older of opening my own bookstore. And I drove him crazy. I remember he like told me I was boring, which was kind of funny. But back then, I didn't understand that just because I was really into something that not everybody else was. And when I broke up with him like a week after we started going together, he started crying in class, and I remember I couldn't for the life of me understand why he was crying because we'd only gone out for like a week, and we hadn't even actually gone out. The only thing we'd done was talk on the phone. So, like I said, I didn't always understand other people's feelings, and sometimes I feel bad because I know I hurt people without meaning to. But anyway, like I said, none of that was really recognized when I was a kid or a teenager. It wasn't until a couple years ago when my grandfather died from cancer, and then like 2 weeks later my sister died from suicide, and I was having so many problems, and it seemed like a lot of my obsessive behaviors were getting worse, and I was really depressed. I was anxious all the time. The attributes I had always had were just really getting stronger, and I think it was because of all the stress. I didn't know how to deal with, I sat for 6 months and watched my grandfather die slowly from cancer, and then after he passed away, I got hit with something really hard, my sister dying, and I just didn't know how to deal with it all, and I felt sometimes like I was losing my mind. So I decided to go, at the recommendation of my doctor, I decided to go talk to somebody, and he put me through all these tests and stuff, mostly because a lot of people in my family are bipolar. I'm not one of them, but I guess he wanted to rule out things like that. And although I didn't test positive for bipolar or any other like mental condition, I scored really high on the Asperger's tests. And after I explained to the doctor all the things I was dealing with and that had kind of been dealing with all my life, we probably spent a good 2 months doing tests and talking about my past and the current things that were going on. And it took him about 2 or 3 months, and he made the diagnosis that I had Asperger Syndrome. And at first, I felt, I kind of suspected after hearing about Asperger Syndrome that it may turn out to be that. So I wasn't totally shocked, but when I actually got the diagnosis, I went through a kind of almost like a mourning period where I didn't know how to deal with the new information. It kind of changed my whole view about everything. Suddenly, I realized that so many parts of my life hadn't really been the way I thought they were. Other people and their behavior didn't necessarily stem from what I thought it did, or it wasn't for the reasons I thought. And I had a really hard time for probably a few months after I got the diagnosis, because so much started making sense, which was good, but I was also really sad that I'd lived so many years, because I was around 30 when I got the diagnosis, and I was sad that I'd lived so many years not knowing these things. And I felt that had I known why I felt the way I did and why I struggled with the things that I did, that life would have been a lot easier, and I might not have made some of the mistakes I made in the past, or I could have worked on things that I need to work on. So it was really hard. And there was also this kind of blow to my confidence that I'd always thought I was normal, and suddenly to find out that I have something like autism, my first thought was, I thought I was fine, but obviously I'm not. And now I don't feel that way about it. I understand that I'm not really, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just different than a lot of other people. And that's not a bad thing, because it actually brings a lot of gifts as well as the problems it brings. So I'm glad that I got the diagnosis, and I'm glad that I know now, and that I can understand more some of the social issues I have, and I can work on them. and I can understand why I do some of the things I do. I understand how much sensory issues have affected my life, which is probably one of the hugest things for me. Is I have so many sensory issues and always have. And before I got diagnosed, I thought everybody had those sensory issues. Like, I thought everybody, couldn't stand tags in their clothes because it would feel like there was a cactus against your skin. Or I thought that everybody was so bothered by the texture of food. And I thought everybody got really dizzy and nauseous when they were around like certain kinds of lighting and stuff. I didn't realize that that wasn't normal. And for much of my life, I wondered, why can other people deal so well with this stuff and I can't? I thought there was something wrong with me, that everybody else hid it pretty well, that they had these issues. And then I come to think, I come to find out that they weren't hiding it. They don't have those issues, so they wouldn't understand really what I go through on a daily basis. But anyway, that's kind of how I got the diagnosis and how I felt kind of afterwards. Now, it's been about 2 or 3 years since I was diagnosed, and I'm okay with it. I mean, there's still issues I have, and it's kind of depressing to think that I'll probably always have the issues to some extent. They're not just going to go away, but some of them I can work on, and I can deal with the rest and just do the best I can to live my life the best I can. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do, and I'm making these videos just to kind of give people some insight into myself, and not only myself, but kind of what it's like to be a person with Asperger Syndrome, because I don't think a lot of people understand unless they have it or someone in their family has it. So that's going to be all for today, but if you have something to say, feel free to comment below. Hit the like if you like this video. Subscribe if you'd like to hear future things from me. You can also comment and put maybe stuff you'd like to hear in the future subjects. So just let me know, and I appreciate you listening. So thank you, everybody.